Welcome back to Fable Talk. This week, Felipe returns. He and I have a discussion about Terramythos. We also talk about some of our favorite aspects of Fable's End, and we talk a lot about the potential of Fable's End online. There's a lot of really good stuff in here. Let's go.
I watched the last episode with you. With I think it was you and Ari talking about the lore. I am a big lore head. I'll say that. I like a lot of like lore in my games, and for me, like I think Fable's End has a lot of potential. Um,
Sure.
I guess let me ask this: is kind of like the lore of Fable's End fully like solidified, or is it still kind of like something like liquid, where it's like it can still kind of like be mixed into like something else?
I think that for the lore, we have some rules that we're following. There's some like established um parameters, but it's pretty liquid. And I've left it like intentionally liquid because the way that the game uh will evolve is that we're going to be visiting all these different time periods and all these different types of stories and all these different genres, and like it makes more sense if we don't want to restrict ourselves so much by creating like um too many anchors, so to speak, in our lore, where we're like, you have to remember that this character is here and this character does this, and it's kind of like, I think it's better and easier for us if it's more freeform, because then that allows us to justify going to places like the Wild West or whatever. And
Mhm.
we don't have to make a reason. We don't have to like find the connective tissue between the Wild West and like ancient Rome, right? Because they just inherently there isn't really a lot of tissue that would connect between those two. Aside from like specific characters showing up in uh, different stories.
No, yeah, I totally feel that. Honestly, kind of like what I was wondering, right? When you were like talking about Fable, about kind of like Fable Zen and how kind of like it's molded almost. For anyone out there who's read Berserk, I guess.
I
The
love
way you
Berserk.
describe.
By the way, just
Oh,
have to
you're a
say,
Berserk head.
Berserk is like one of my favorite things in the world. I love Berserk so much.
Oh man, there we
I
go. There's
love
our conversation right there. Conversation
Robert. I
starter.
mean, that's the conversation. The conversation is basically about Berserk. Honestly, like one of the things that has been a long running intention is to have Crimson Avenger mimic a little bit of a guts, like not necessarily the storyline, but like
But
I
just
want
his
her to kind of,
gigantic blade.
yeah, I want her to kind of end up looking like guts after a while.
Dude,
Um,
that would be so cool. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna popcorn in here because I was gonna say we were talking about like last time was Ty and Ari. What I the first thing I thought of when you described kind of like how Fables End characters are morphed, it was like the Astro Realm pretty much. Like because I mean that's how the Astro Realm is in Berserk, right? Where basically people's beliefs kind of like accumulate into almost like one like, kind of like version of a character. Let's say kind of like you believe the world believes in the tooth fairy, right? But like I'm Latin American, so I have a bit of experience with this. Like the tooth fairy in Latin America is a little rat called Raton Perez. And like basically that what it is like a little like rat that steals your teeth. But like here it's like almost like a fairy godmother type character that is kind of like like sneaks into your like house and like just like steals your teeth from your belt with like a magic wand. So I'm wondering kind of like how like in the world of Fable Zen, right? Like would that be two versions of the Tooth Fairy, or would it be more like it kind of like accumulate into like one like Tooth Fairy, quote unquote?
the answer is that it just depends on where that uh, story originates, at like what time period that story originates, right? Like if the rat is a really old tale from like BC, right? Let's say that I don't know. I don't think that that's when it came from. I think it's probably more modern than that. But let's just like pretend that it was. Then it
Hmm.
would exist in a different era of Terra Mythos. So there wouldn't be like overlap between that era and the era that we're in right now, which is the middle era. Um, but they can exist side by side. There's no reason why they wouldn't. Um, and I think personally, it's more fun if you have like a deck full of different kinds of tooth fairies from all over the world, that would be super fun. And I would even argue that that could be an expansion in and of itself. If
Yeah.
there's enough material, if there's like enough going on, if we could find, it would almost be like, imagine all the versions of Santa Claus. You have like Father Christmas and Saint Nick and Santa Claus, and like you could theoretically make a card out of all of them, and that card would like Krampus, for example, like that feels like it could be a Raven version of Santa Claus, right? And you could have each Santa Claus exist in a different kingdom. Um, but again, it's more. I when I was talking about this before, I was saying it was liquid. What I mean is, um, we want to. It's basically just like making it flexible to make whatever fits the game the best. Like if the idea of having a Santa Claus set where there's a different kind of Santa Claus in each kingdom is like the coolest idea, then we build the entire world of Fable's End to service that idea, to service that set, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that totally is clear. I was gonna say like that kind of clears up a question I had because I remember again I make a lot of references to previous episodes because I wish I was in that conversation because I'm very invested in kind of like the lore of this game. I think you mentioned you're giving an example of kind of like how if two people had like two different beliefs of two different versions of like let's say Crimson Avenger, right? Like two different versions of Crimson Avenger would occupy the world of like Terramythos. But I guess my question for that is kind of like, is there like almost like a threshold for that character to kind of like mold itself into the world? So for example, like let's say like one single person on the entirety of planet Earth believes that like Red Riding Hood or whatever is like I don't know, like a flying like WWE version of like Red Riding Hood, right? Like, would that be like a solidified like character in Terra Mythos, or to kind of like more? It's like you probably need a little bit more like belief behind that for that character to kind of like be fully formulated into Terra Mythos.
I think it could be both. My take here would be like, let's say that you wanted, let's just take that example to its logical extreme, right? Someone on in the physical realm, like someone on Earth, was like, I think I'm going to tell a story about Red Riding Hood, specifically about Red Riding Hood, where she is a WWE style wrestler, right? And then like it's a reflection of that story, and then maybe there's a heel that she's like matched up against, and that heel is like the big bad wolf, right? Or
Hmm.
that there's like a big matchup, that there's like a cage match that's coming up, or I don't even know, like a championship, and like he's the reigning champion, and like her whole journey is like trying to navigate through the world of WWE as he like taunts her and like whatever, that story would probably exist in a different time era than the Red Riding Hood story that's the traditional one, because that story is rooted in a specific time period, right? Like vaguely, like it's kind of, we have a mental image of what Red Riding Hood is. It's not modern times. There's no electricity. Um, there's no like cars or industry. It's like, seems like it would be kind of Middle Ages, but also maybe like just before the dawn of industry. Um, and the WWE version would be like, WWE is a modern thing, so it would exist within a time period that kind of resembles the 20th or 21st century. Um, so they wouldn't exist at the same time period in Terra Mythos, but they probably would be in the same kingdom, right? It would be like the Wolf Kingdom, but the modern version of the Wolf Kingdom, if that makes sense.
Okay, I like that a lot. That actually like clears up stuff where it's almost like it's not just like a million copies of them existing at the same time, but it's more kind of like almost a character could kind of like segment and transform. It's almost like if you're considering it as like evolution, like speciation almost, where it's like, oh, these are different types of Red Riding Hoods that have like evolved over the years almost.
Right, right,
Um,
exactly, exactly.
so
And there would be, oh, go ahead, go ahead.
no, please continue.
And that's where the like eras of Terra Mythos was sort of, this was one way that it occurred to me that that was going to be a problem, where you're like, well, how does all this stuff like exist in the same time period at the same in the same place, right? Um, at the same time, like how do you have a WWE Red Riding Hood and a normal Red Riding Hood, and like do they live in the same forest together? Is there like a big like arena complex next to the forest, that doesn't really make any sense. It feels like very jarring or asynchronous. And like I think the era solved that problem where Terramythos exists in different eras, and those eras are representative of different tales from different times. Like the ancient era would be, it would be like the representation of all the stories that were told a long time ago. So there is no technology, there is no like sci-fi, or I mean, there's technology, but there's not like industry or electricity because the stories that were told at that time, like no one knew what that was. They hadn't discovered it yet.
Yeah,
So a
I get what
reflection.
you mean.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, no.
So
I was gonna say. I want to before we get too deep into it. I actually, so I understand your point, and I was gonna say, I want to segue this conversation, because into kind of like something that might lead to kind of like a discussion about the online version and sort of like events in it.
sure.
So last time we talked about a lot of the heroes of Fables End, right? Kind of like heroes slash kind of like characters in these kingdoms, like unique kind of like characters. What that episode actually got me thinking about is kind of like what would like a Fables End villain for like an era look like? You know what I mean? Kind of like
Mhm.
because what I was thinking was maybe let's say for the medieval times, right? Like for medieval kind of like ages, what I would think is like kind of like the overall enemy of an era is kind of like hunger, like famine, all this stuff. So would that take almost like form as almost like a global villain in like Terra Mythos? Like would that be kind of like the world war of the era, like this like grand epic fight against this kind of like creature, almost like I guess like World of Warcraft, for example. Like they have their expansions, each expansion let's say Wrath of the Lich King, obviously Lich King's kind of like the main villain, like that's the guy, like the wars gotta unite because there's a greater evil that one kingdom can take. um would there be some sort of kind of like a parallel to that in Terra Mythos?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that we will. I won't get too much into it because the sort of what the game the I don't know how to say this, the like mechanical support for that specific idea is still being developed. And there we're making room for something that the world of Terra Mythos will have villains and it will have heroes. Um, and we will absolutely focus in on the sort of like environment or context of like one super villain of a specific kingdom or of a specific era, right? Like we could totally make um a character that no one's seen yet become the villain of the middle era, right? He's like the great villain, and his he has his own plan, and what he's trying to do is this, or she or they or whatever. um that is one thing that I want to do is between you and myself and the people that are closely involved in the project, and really anyone else that wants to be a part of this, is I'd rather collaborate on what that looks like because I think that the game, as I've said before, trading card games don't tell stories really well because the lore ends up becoming really separate from the game, and it's hard to like in a card game. I was watching this video earlier about this where it was a video about Yu-Gi-Oh on YouTube, and
Is it the thought of a Bass storyline?
no, the idea was it was just a comment about how like when you're playing a card game, a trading card game, you're like role playing a role, right? In Magic, you're a planeswalker. You're like a wizard who's summoning all this stuff, and you're like fighting another wizard. Um, in Pokemon, you're like a Pokemon trainer. But in Yu-Gi-Oh, you're like a card game player. Like that's what you're like role playing yourself in this like weird metatextual way. Um,
Hmm.
and I think that when we become too literal about like what we are as the player and then what we're doing as the player outside of like a more vague contest or combat, um, it starts to it has this weird effect where it can really constrain what the story's doing, right? Say that like say we have a big villain in our in the middle era arc of Fable's End. There's like a huge villain who comes out of nowhere. Let's say it's like the big bad wolf. Like there's one specific wolf who's like grows to the size of three houses and is just this dominant force and no one can stop it. And it just goes around and eats everything in all the kingdoms, and the kingdoms band together because they're like, it just keeps growing and growing. We have to like destroy this thing. We need to combine our forces. If you play that card as a card in the game, and then I, as another player, kill that card, like, wait, did I just change the story or not? And then the story and the game become this like weird disassociation where you have uh like meaningful consequences for characters' actions that are entirely separate from the game mechanics that you're playing. Because what I do in the game may or may not affect the story. And Kwame and I have had this, and I think we may have shared this with you before, but one of the things we really wanted to do is we really wanted to make our tournaments, um, the tournament winners have a say in how a story develops. And other card games have done this before too. Like Legend of the Five Rings is really famous for doing this, where at the end of a tournament, you would be able to make a choice about a specific character in the storyline, and that would like influence the next expansion. I'm really invested in doing something like that, right?
Yeah.
Because that way it becomes like, oh, well, the way that we play this game is consequential to how the story develops, and I like that like mechanical, experiential through line where you're like not just telling a story that's tangential to the gameplay experience. The gameplay experience is informing the story. Um,
And this is actually where I'm gonna plug myself in as to kind of like my role in this project real quick. And you tell me if I'm going too far with this because like I don't know what's
sure, we
TMI
can
or
we
what's
can always
not.
edit out what is, if you say something that is not supposed to be said, we can always edit it out later. It's not a big deal.
Yeah. But I was gonna say for Fable Zen Online, I thought one of the great aspects of Fable Zen Online is kind of like I think in real life you're right that's complete. It's like much harder to like convey that kind of like sense of almost like story and lore, just like a individual playing card game. But
Hmm.
via the online version, that's where the like such great things like events could come in. Where I mean, for example, I think we've had this conversation lightly, but almost like, we have like a season of Fable's End, and like this season kind of like it goes over like X era, or like that's like the first era of Fable's End, and the first era, um, the X, like yeah, I'm saying X. Maybe I should change my letter. Z was the villain like of the era basically, and kind of like maybe the almost like there's like some special kind of like way you play the game or something, a way you kind of like progress through the game that kind of like ties to like his event. I think this was I'm not gonna say anything 'cause I think this is going too far, but one of the special aspects we were like thinking of adding to Fable's End very much kind of like tied into this concept essentially. Just to give you, I guess, like more of a clue, it was a more like a machine based villain that we talked about before. Not sure
Right,
if you
right, right,
remember.
right. Yep, I
Yep.
remember that.
Yeah, and like that, and like just I think that's where like Fable Zen Online could like really help out Fable Zen. Because I think everyone IRL, like I mean like for me, I always like love playing like real life with my friends when I can card games. But most of the time, my friends like are like almost like states away pretty much. So I would take whatever way I could get to play with them, which is why online is so great. But I think online could also offer that type of experience people are looking forward to. There's like more attached to the game where, real life, you get like the full experience of playing with someone face to face, kind of like all the hiccups you could do, just like drawing cards, really getting that special feel of like shuffling them, all that stuff. Because for me, I mean, I played Yu-Gi-Oh since I was a kid. I always like feel like it's super nerdy to say it, but like I always feel really attached to my cards. Like I don't know. I was like Yu-Gi-Oh anime. I was like kind of like had my deck close to it. It's like, wow, these are my dual spirits. Like this, like how I would like the kind of like friends I would have in the Yu-Gi-Oh world, like fighting with me. But I feel with Fable's End, it's I the kind of like I'm very headcanony. I'm a nerd like that. I just kind of like really immersing myself in stuff.
Mm.
I always kind of imagine like when I'm fighting in Fable's End, it's more like um I'm kind of like just surveying these like group of characters and kind of like helping guide their decisions towards like winning this battle basically because it's like my own faction like that they've made to just like survive in this like world. Um, so I like to think of that, and for that reason, I really like the error idea because then you have like this whole history of Terramythos where like people who like were in this season of Fable then who played it, where it's like, oh yeah, I remember like back in like the great Terramythos war.
Right,
Like
right,
and
right,
like
right. Yeah,
and that
totally.
Yeah, it adds that layer, and for me, that would be like when you said that, I was like, that's so cool. Like that is so cool that I kind of like, if we end up going that route, I'm like here day one, and I can kind of like say like this expansion is so cool because there's like this whole history. I don't know. I'm just I think online could really like enhance that experience because it goes from being kind of like a head canon to like, oh, this was a cool ass event in the game, and now like like if you missed it, you could still kind of like tag on to the next event. But if you were there, it's like something that's very like special and dear to you because you could talk about that and kind of like reminisce on it in the future. But yeah.
Absolutely. I think I love that idea a lot. And and the online version of the game does allow for us to do things we can't do in person. And 100% hear you with the, I'm big on in person. Like I love playing a game. I love like holding the cards. I love that tactile feeling, of like picking up a card and like putting it down. I like the presence and focus of being in a game with someone where you're just like both locked into this experience. And when it's really engaging and there's no distractions, that's one of my favorite experiences in gaming. Um, and that's not always available, like you're saying. Like, you don't live in New York City and I don't live in North Carolina, so it's like, how do you and I get to play? Well, Fables and Online is really the answer for that. And I think I agree with you that having the platform, taking advantage of what the platform has to offer, and you really letting that be its own thing, right? The tricky part is like how you connect the online to the real life trading card game, and there might be some way that we have to uh, establish a foundation so that there isn't this sense of like, if you don't play online, 'cause some players will not want to play online, they'll only want to play in person, and they'll pick up a set and be like, what is going on? I don't understand any of this, right? Um, and I want to be careful that we're not going so far ahead of ourselves in the online version, because it will be very easy to do that too, because of the way that the whole process works. It's just we don't have to wait for things to get manufactured and then shipped to us, right? It's
Hmm.
like I can send you files and you can program it and it's in the game, and that's pretty much it. As long as everything is like tested and all the artwork is done, it's like that's pretty much what it is. Um, and I could see us using Fables End Online as like the springboard for a lot of things that would happen outside of Fables End Online. And I don't know what's gonna, truth be told, not to like take this into a different direction, but the tariff situation is really, really difficult for us, and I don't know what it's going to mean for us in a year. Um, and so it does make us hard. I have a whole like plan for the next, I would say, 3 or 4 years of manufacturing, but that doesn't mean that we'll be able to do it all. And if Fables End Online is where we end up defaulting all of our development into, then so be it. But ultimately, and we're lucky. We're like super lucky that we have this. Oh my God, it's like, oh my, if we didn't have Fables End Online, I think I'd be losing my mind right now. Um, but yeah, I just it's very important to me that both experiences are as viable for players as they can be without having to force one to cross over to the other. But if you do choose to cross over, it's rewarding in both directions, if that makes sense.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I would say. I mean, like, I grew up on Sims, but really kind of like I as much I'm a programmer. This is kind of like what I do, but I really don't think kind of like any online version will ever come close to like the authenticity of just kind of like holding like a card in your hand and just seeing it. Like I know,
Mm.
so I know especially like some people who play like like a lot of like Sims, like they like that feeling. For me though, I always am someone who's like a very much big fan of just kind of like playing IRL with my friends. And some of it's just so hard to get to do that because we'll meet up. It's like, why are we gonna play cards? We could do like other stuff. And it's like, oh my god, I just want to play one card game with you. Like,
Yeah, right.
but yeah, I will say I completely get what you mean. And for me, I think Fables Out Online was always kind of like a supplement where it's like people are gonna get these cards and like and maybe it's the other way around. People are gonna play Fables Out Online first, and it's like wait, this is like this is a game I could like get in real life. And I think that was for me. Like I remember Legends of Runeterra is like the opposite of that, where it's like, oh, we're never making like these cards like real. Like these are only like cards that you get online. I was like, that's kind of a bummer. I mean, like, I bet you loads of people that game would become much more popular if you actually like had like real cards. But it was a Hearthstone situation there where I think like the game would not have functioned that well in a real life format. I think Fable's End is like just kind of like perfect IRL. Like I've played it so many times with my girlfriend who she let's just say she plays a lot of like kind of traditional playing card games, but card games is kind of like some of it like Yu-Gi-Oh is overwhelming for her. But it was really hard to explain like, oh yeah, I could like basically if you play your deck well, you kind of like beat me this, like probably 2 turns. But
Right,
I feel
right.
with Edge, it's like it's so much nicer because like she really loves Scorpion. That's her favorite deck. And she really loves the concept of a future deck that I kind of like not gonna say the name of, but I explained it to her how it's gonna work, and she's like, "Oh my god, I'm gonna play that deck next, like combine it with Scorpion," and like it's she's not a very big card game player, but Fable's Edge is kind of like so intuitive, just that type of game where it's like, like I feel she can think of the combos herself. She's not at the stage where she kind of like deck build herself. She so it really depends on me for that.
Hmm.
But I think just kind of like um the online version is great for her because she tries stuff against me, and then she just plays a real version, and it's like she just knows cards instinctually, right? Because like I feel that for me is like the greatest part of this version because everything's like so automated, where it's like you don't really you will play cards in Fables Online, and just FYI, I guess at game launch, so I'll obviously be a tutorial for Fables Online to just kind of like give you the basics essentially for cards. And then once you kind of like get through that, you should obviously, I mean, with practice, you'll have like the game will just be literally become natural. And I feel that you don't need that IRL, of course. You can just read the rules, kind of like learn to play the game. But I mean, as someone who's kind of like had to teach someone to play the game without online, and then compare it to someone who has learned from online and just transition to the actual game, you see like it just so much more accelerated because like now it's not just reading the cards, it's like seeing them like almost like played for you. So now when you like just transfer to real life, you're just doing the actions you already saw in the game. So that for me is kind of like where I'm very excited with this project that I get to kind of like contribute towards almost the indoctrination sounds like a really bad word. I want to say more towards the
I think I prefer
education
the term
of an
brainwashing,
incoming
actually.
community. Yeah, we're brainwashing the world to becoming
Yeah.
Fables End fans. Sorry
Yeah.
guys, cat's out of the bag.
Cat's out of the bag. This is a nefarious plot to take over the world.
Yeah, this
Uh,
video is actually a hypnosis video. I'm emitting like powerful sound waves that's like corrupting your mind right now.
there's a low frequency subliminal message that's being played throughout this entire conversation, and we're just passing the time to get you to
Yeah,
listen to that so that you'll play
it's in
Fables
the
End.
subtext. You've been hearing it if you haven't noticed. It keeps saying like and subscribe to this channel to help us grow.
Like
We have
hey,
we
we
have
need
a goal. We have a goal of more viewers than are in this video by the end of the year. So please help us out, guys.
exactly. Listen, if we can get up to 74 subscribers, I will quit my job and I will become a full-time podcaster. 74 subscribers, that's all it takes. We might even have
Let's-
74 at this point. I think we have 73, but um
We are at 73 subscribers.
73 subscribers. God, oh, we're so close. One more. To your point about Fables End Fables End Online as a teaching tool, though, I wholeheartedly agree with you, and it's one of the things I wish. It's actually a huge advantage of Fables End Online that we've talked about this numerous times. But being able to have someone sit down and have the game not allow you to make mistakes or not allow you to play incorrectly, rather, you can still make mistakes, but it doesn't let you play the game incorrectly, is huge. And it reminds you of each of the phases and it guides you through it and it's like automated for you. So it just tracks everything. It's huge. And I can absolutely see it being the case that people who learn Fables End Online first and then go to the IRL card game have a much easier transition than the other way around. Um, and that's a lot of it. I owe you a lot for that because that speaks to you and Chris and how an amazing of a job you guys have done. And I'm
No,
really
yeah, it's
excited
definitely
about.
it's been a journey. Like for me, I think before this call we were talking about a lot of like wood shop stuff. If you were the same way, I guess like over like I guess for this project like a longer span of time, where just it's seeing this thing transform from like a crude block of wood to like something with like real structure and kind of like wow, this is like something I could find like maybe like selling somewhere. Like just for context, I guess what I'm making is I made a um shoot, what's it called? End grain cutting board for my girlfriend for her birthday, and that's kind of like what we were talking about before. How like it was like I'm learning a lot of like wood shop. Steven's clearly a master, just from our arts and crafts kind of like got over here, and it just I mean programming wise it gives you the same feeling. You just kind of like whenever you see stuff come together, it's like oh man, dude, I could like go to sleep today like really happy. Like it's that feel of a job well done. I feel like honestly I think Fable was still a long ways to go for but the fact that I'm just able to kind of like boot it up now, this like play to test the game, stuff like that is pretty nuts, honestly. And we've got to a point where it's like much better than our pre-alpha that we did. Just kind of like I guess like it was a closed pre-alpha just to kind of like test the game. We caught a few bugs here and there. Now I've been playing a lot with Tylen, just kind of like play testing in general. And the bugs we've caught have been very minor, to say the least. It's mostly just been me just misunderstanding some timings of stuff, and it's like, oh, okay, I understand that, but it's not like as like gross as those before. It was like, oh, sometimes like this little thing causes to crash the game. I was like, oh, that shouldn't happen. But it's just um time and polish. That's all it's been. And now we're getting into animations. Oh man, yeah. I hope y'all are excited for that because I mean, every time I kind of look at it, I don't think obviously we don't have like a triple A studio polish, but I'll say it does look pretty clean. Credit to Crispy and Steven. They've been killing it out there.
I wish I had, full time to devote to the project because it's just with my position being what it is, I'm the CEO, the owner, the primary artist, the primary graphic designer, the primary card designer, the primary social media person. There's so many things wrapped into one package. It's like it's so hard because I want to do everything and I just can't do everything. And it's really I wish that I had the time and the resources to give the online version what I think it really deserves. Because you and Chris have done so much work. And just for everyone out there, I know that we've talked about this before in a previous episode, but the amount of time and effort that Chris and Felipe have put into this project is mind-boggling. I mean, the fact that where we are now, we've come all this way on the backs of these two, who have relentlessly uh, troubleshot every conceivable bug in the game. And there have been, I don't even know how many bugs we've had over the past year and a half, probably like 1,000, right? Like there's just so many things where it was just a little thing where it was like, oh, this isn't resolving correctly, or like, oh, the timing of this is wrong, or oh, um, there's a weird thing that happens here, and then it's like going back into the code and just like adjusting things and adding more parameters or whatever. But that like relentless dedication to making that to fixing all those problems, Felipe and Chris really deserve all the credit in the world for that. And the reason why the game runs the way it runs is because of their hard work. It's not, I didn't do anything to help that aside from like point out how things should work. But so when Felipe says, "Oh, we don't have very many bugs," he says that with a lot of it seems casual for him to be like, yeah, it runs pretty well. And it's like, it is not underscoring how much effort was put in to get it to be that way. And Felipe deserves a lot of credit for that because he is running through all that code and programming it all.
Well, I appreciate it immensely. Honestly, yeah, I think this has just been a group effort. Like I think like no man is an army. So I think like this is only achievable
No,
by
I
just
agree.
like just
I agree
good
with that.
friends, good company, just kind of like everyone. Like I think this community is great. I mean like I've never I've had like I've been in Yu-Gi-Oh a lot, I guess. Slightly in like the One Piece community. And it's kind of similar there, but I feel like just kind of like I'm have a much more personal connection here, and I just much more involved where I kind of like see like everyone like putting so much effort towards like Fable's End, like this like game like people like really like love. And just like I remember like when I first saw this game, like I felt it was something special. Like I mean like I kid you not when I say like, and I've said this like numerous times. Every card in Fable's End is a useful one. Like I am not kidding when I say that. I think like I play One Piece and I love that game. I want to be clear. I'm not kind of like saying like, oh, One Piece sucks. I actually went to the regionals, had a lot of fun. But one of my biggest gripes with that game is that I think out of like every booster box, you'll get like maybe like 10% of those cards are like actually useful. Like there's a lot of like Reddit posts of people just like throwing away a lot of their bulk in like parking lots. Like they don't even bother
Oh,
taking it home because like
bad.
it's like, obviously a lot of them are like scalpers, but it's like um that is crazy to me that you could have like a game where like so much of your cards are like not even like worth stuff. Like I mean even Yu-Gi-Oh, right, that has like this insane kind of like taste problem. You want to keep a lot of your cards because a lot of your cards do like crazy effects. Like, you know, like I think like even like aside from like very old vanilla cards, even like very like minor cards that come in a new set are pretty useful. Like I pulled like target packs and stuff I pulled is kind of like, yeah, I could see us using like I mean maybe I'm not happy with it, but these cards I can still kind of like use in a deck some way someday. But like Fable's End, dude, like you know, I like any human being, I'll have like favorites and like least favorites or whatever. But even then, even my least favorite card, I see the use of it. I see the vision with which this card was made, and I feel that's like obviously like big kudos to Steven. But what I'm trying to say this is like that's what kind of like really brought me to this game. Like that day I like met Steven's library, just kind of like sat down and kind of like saw how this game is played. Like I saw the art style is really what drew me, but just kind of like as someone who's been playing like card games for years, and I mean like years of my life, too much in fact. Uh, I saw this game and I'm like, this is like something incredible. Like it addresses so many problems with other TCGs. Not to say they're not good, but I feel I feel obviously there's always stuff you could do better. I feel just kind of like Fables and the year that's spent in development are not for nothing. It's I see like every like the idea behind like every design. It just like the hard work that goes into like making sure like this card like fits into like a healthy place in the game. So yeah, that's kind of like I think I've said it before, but that's for me kind of like why I just really love this game. Like it's the art is great. Again, kudos to Steven. The design of like how the cards play in the game is great. Kudos to Steven and Kwame because both of those guys extremely contributed to their like combined expertise in card games. Um, and I'm just really happy to be the one that or one of the people that kind of like help in spreading this wonderful game to everyone. Guys, I feel if you like card games, like Fable, maybe Fable's End is a little bit out of the way, but I really think it's worth giving it a shot and just kind of like seeing like if this game is up your alley. Because for most of my friends I've shown them to who like actually like card games, they like the game. And it the only reason it's the only reason sometimes they like don't play is because like oh I'm just waiting for like the new cards so I could try it out like try more stuff out. But yeah,
That
that was
was
a whole
a rousing endorsement, and I don't know how to respond to that.
rant.
Um, I feel like I mean it's I think we're hitting around the 30-minute mark, but I feel like you and I are just scratching the surface of conversation. I are you okay to continue talking for a little bit? Is that all
Yeah,
right? I know it's already pretty
it
late, but I don't mind
no,
if you don't mind.
I slept. I was lazy. Today's a lazy Sunday because I gotta wake up for church next Good Friday. So,
Got it.
there
Okay.
next Sunday. But so I'm good to keep talking. I'm pretty awake.
Okay. Okay. Cool. Yeah. What was I gonna say? I to your point about every card being useful in the game, and that's a big intention of mine as a designer. I really I feel you. I don't like the chaff in other games. I don't like that. And I get it. You know, I've been playing trading card games for decades. I understand. Like that's just the model, right? You have the rarity model where common, uncommon, rare, and then your various types of rarity. Um, and you know, at least within some of their games like Yu-Gi-Oh, like you were saying, some of those cards can come in and people are like, this card is terrible. And then like, I don't know, four sets later, some other card comes out and then they go back to that card and like, whoa, wait a minute, hold on. This card is amazing. because of the way it interacts with this new card. So at least you have that sometimes in Yu-Gi-Oh. I don't know how common that is. I'm not sure if, and maybe I'm misunderstanding, but that's my understanding of it. That's what that Kwame always tells me. He's like, some card that everyone thought was like a penny rare, no one cared about, and then you come back to it 5 sets later because there's some interaction that like it goes bananas with. But
Yeah,
yeah,
it depends on the game, but I mean, yeah, exactly. Like I feel that, and that's why I said Yuga's actually one of the better ones in that regard. Because I feel like, for example, for One Piece, like it's not so much of that case, just because like a lot of their cards kind of like, if you get bulk, are they're like cards that like do something like very basic that like another completely different card will do the same of. And it's like it just kind of like drives me a little nuts sometimes. But I think that game is also very well designed. Truthfully, I just wish the card kind of like as rarity model was better, because I think the game design is great. I just think it's like um yeah, I sometimes feel like if I don't get a box for that game, it's like it's not worth the opening packs. I should just wait for a TCG player to have the cards I want.
yeah, I hear you. Well, I mean, and that's an experience that I want to try to circumvent for players that play Fable's End. I really want them to get their money's worth, right? I want the value to be there where you like purchase these cards and you may not love every card in the game, but every card is going to find a home in at least one deck. And there will be a card in every set that you will love. Like that's my goal here. And I can't guarantee that you'll love every card because that how could I, right? How can anyone? But in terms of like trying to understand the player base and trying to understand um, the different types of Fables End players, which I'm learning the more and more I work with Felipe and Chris. With you, I mean, you guys are just you're so different, and even like between Felipe, you and Thailand and Eric and Jarrett and Kwame, even like you guys all have there's some overlapping commonalities, but you're all very different, and it's been a really interesting challenge and intention to try to design a card for each one of you. So every expansion has something for all of you, right? Um, and I know there are going to be some designs that you may not like a particular kingdom, but um, the supplemental cards for other kingdoms that you already like are going to really really scratch an itch for you. And I like every time I design a card, every time I like have an idea for a card or I do a little sketch for something, I'm like, oh, this is a total Felipe card, or oh, this is a total Kwame card. Like I know exactly, like Kwame and I know each other so well. Like I will like come up with a design and I will get so excited about it and I will send it to Kwame and be like, I have your new favorite card,
Yeah,
and
and
he'll
I
go,
guess I'll say for me, just to kind of give you an example of like how Fable then captures so many kind of like player types. Um, I think the best example I give is between me and my friend. We actually started off playing the same kingdom, Kraken. Kraken lovers out there, shout out to y'all. But I
I think
remember,
they're called crackheads. Is that the
yeah,
right term?
crackheads. Dude, I'll say the crackhead crew is out there. Scorpion lovers beware. We're bringing water out to this thing. We got no time for sand. But no, but
Understand? No.
I was gonna say for after Kraken, right? We both really love Kraken. We have completely different play styles. My friend, I'm not gonna name drop him, but he is a very he plays a lot of like risk based like map games or whatever. He loves the game board game Risk. He loves playing kind of like games like Hoi, stuff like that. So he's always kind of like very he plays games with the aspect of kind of like being like very kind of like he's very tiptoey, which is kind of like completely opposite to like what you would expect from him. But he likes kind of like wearing you down until you kind of like have nothing left to like shoot with. So he is his whole thing. He's very military. He always likes being prepared for stuff. Um, Meanwhile, like I am very kind of like aggressive. Like Steven knows me. I live life off of passion. That's kind of like how I got into this product and I wrote Chris P. Like I saw it, I was like, boom, I love this. You captured my heart. So I'm here. But because of that, I think that we have completely kind of like different play styles. And we even revolve around kind of like the same card. So for example, me and my friend, I'm not sure if it's his favorite card, but we both really love Slippery Stowaway. Like it's one of our favorite cards in the game. There's actually a new card that has superseded him on the rankings, which I cannot say because he's part of the expansion. But Slippery Stowaway, right? Effect is I can unbury a card, just bring kind of like back into position. And a very cheap, very kind of like cheap card like Skullwise. I love using that card to break into people's hands. I'm a gambler at heart. I literally just love kind of like getting into people's minds. And if you kind of like know my personality, you'll probably kind of like bait me into it. But I'll think you a bit, maybe for a little. But I just love going into that card. I'll probably pair that kingdom up with a wolf kingdom, use Witch's Oven. I'll just break into your hand nonstop with it, and I just love the power of that card. It's a complete gamble, but it's how I play because my opponent doesn't know like how my opponent doesn't get a break, and also if they don't know who I am, they won't kind of like expect me doing that. It's like who's gonna be this stupid? I'm like the door. And I just like freaking like spring into their head. I've gotten Kwame a lot like that. Kwame never expects what I do. I'm gonna be real. That's the only reason I went against him. He's very good at the game. I'm speaking too fast. That's the only reason I win against him. He's very good at the game, but I feel I just catch him by surprise a lot because I'm like a very untraditional player. I think compared to what he goes against with Steven, who's very careful. Meanwhile, my friend, he likes using Slippery Stowaway in a completely different way, where it's like he'll have like a creature out with embers, right? And then Slippery Stowaway, rather than using to break through, he uses them to invade. And you're gonna be like, huh? Because for people who know that card, because Slippery Stowaway, when he invades, really does nothing. Because that card essentially just does 0 damage to your chapter if it invades while being posted.
Right.
But what he likes to do is that he likes to use it with Raise the Jolly Roger, which whenever you successfully land an invasion, you mill a card.
Right.
So it's kind of like, what do you do? Am I going to block a card that does nothing to me but mill a card, and let that basically use that blocking resource to kind of just what's it called? Use that blocking resource to literally block like no damage, or am I going to let my opponent like mill my card and literally take resources away from my deck? Let's say in this case, I'm not Wolf, right? I'm like Raven or Scorpion, and that is a permanent loss for like a card, and like especially in Scorpion where it's like it's a deck that relies on like draw power, and you're taking away that stuff from them. And with new packs, that strategy I think is gonna be very effective, especially with like my new favorite card, Steven. I think you know what I'm talking about. Where you kind of just like maybe drain your opponent's resources a bit more, and he kind of like finds out like clever solutions like that, just kind of like basically draw me out and always kind of like stay secure. So his game is more like a slow game, where my game I like to be an aggressor a lot. I like to force my opponents to like difficult situations, just get their hand going, and then kind of like push the momentum in the game because I work off speed a lot. Like I kind of like I like the speed of the game intensifying because it makes my opponent more nervous and it gets me more in my groove. I guess that's long-winded conversation, but point is, Fable's End, even the same cards can offer completely different play styles, and I've said that with for many cards. Like I mean, like I played Raven decks too, and the way me and Chris play Raven decks are completely different as well. It's just nuts, kind of like the variety this game has with like solo cards compared to. I use something. I use my kind of like I play a lot Yu-Gi-Oh, where usually a lot of archetypes just kind of like play to one specific style. Where it's kind of like once you play this archetype, it's like I know what I'm gonna do. If I'm playing this deck, this is exactly what they're gonna do. They're locked into this. Meanwhile, Fable's End, that's not always the case. Maybe you could predict their general behavior based off abilities, but you're certainly not going to predict how they play.
Yeah, and I think what's really cool about the game is that you can mix it up in the middle of the game, and you know, it's unfortunate. Felipe, I wish you and I could play more games together because I feel like every time we play, it's like, oh, the Mac build is working, and we're in a meeting, and we play, and I'm like totally not thinking about making the best moves. I'm thinking about like, oh, do we need
crash the game?
Yeah. Well, it's also it's like what would crash the game, and then I'm like, oh, is this working correctly? And then like some menu will pop up, and I'm like, how do I make that menu look better? Or like, how do I, I'm thinking about designing, and I'm not thinking about playing. Kwame has noticed it, but he's called me out on this a lot. He's like, you got to stop designing while you're playing. You have to just play. But yeah, the thing is that like if you are playing a certain way, and I am responding a certain way, like I can change up the way that I play the game in the middle of the game, and that can affect the outcome. It's not like the deck stops working for me if I don't play a certain way, right? Like it's not like, oh, I'm no longer aggressive, therefore the deck isn't doing anything for me anymore, right? Or like I'm so locked into a specific strategy. Like every card, because it has multiple functions, and can be used in different ways, it's really interesting to me how the system retains a lot of variability or variance. And sometimes even now when you were talking about attacking with Slippery Stowaway, invading with Slippery Stowaway with the Raised Jolly Roger, to me is a strategy I've never heard of before. I've never heard anyone come up with that strategy. And like the fact that it's like, oh my God, I didn't even think about doing that, right? And that you can recur uh Slippery Stowaway to do it again. And then your opponent's like, well, I block nothing? Like, or do I mill the card? And that whole like conundrum, that the way that you can apply pressure that way. But then you could just as easily bring Slippery Stowaway and then attack the hand and move into your strategy. So it's like the game, and the design is always focused in that way as well, where it's like I'm always trying to design cards that have multiple places in multiple decks, that have multiple combos with different kingdoms, or there's a lot of like points of connectivity or synergy between other unlike strategies. So and that they're more interested in like sort of playing the game's playing to the game's mechanics rather than the game playing to their mechanics. Although there is going to be a little bit of that as we move forward too, because there needs to be some build around cards too. Because I think players will need a little bit of guidance, and those card designs will probably. I can already tell you, and this is stuff you haven't seen yet, Felipe. There's a bunch of stuff you haven't seen yet, and or that you haven't even played yet, or that you've looked at and you're like, it won't register until you actually start playing with it and the way that it all comes together, that feel very, very different from what the game is doing right now. And I'm really, really excited about that. Like that's the thing that gets me, that's the thing that motivates me the most. Even in the times where I feel like I'm being overrun by too many tasks and you know, like the weight of everything in the world is all on my shoulders. I think about that and it rejuvenates me and it makes me more excited for continuing to make cards, honestly.
Yeah, and I agree. Like first of all, yeah, I agree with obviously that. Like kind of like build um cards like build around. That's always like a good thing to have a game, especially when you're like teaching someone. But I completely like agree that it's just like I think that's like kind of like um in general like well the general joy of just building card games, but kind of like what really makes this game special is kind of like the thought that goes into each one. I think that speaks to kind of like the advantage also of the expandable kind of like card game format, where it's like maybe you're making like less cards and like other card games, but those cards have more thought into them. Like will open like a new like Fable Zen kind of like product, and it's like like scrap, and there's really like trash cards. Like no, like
I mean,
like
someone will probably think that of some cards, and I think that that's okay, right? I don't think that's wrong for players to look at a card and think this isn't for me. The goal here is to like have at least one card that is for them. And maybe
Mhm.
that card is tailored to them, right? Like if you have a expansion, so our first expansion will have 3 new cards in every kingdom, right? You may not love all of those cards, but I guarantee there's going to be one that you will really like. There's at least one, if not 2 or 3. Um, and I think that's the goal, is that you, I want to create something for different types of people rather than just creating one thing that everyone else has to adapt to, right? Like I think it's okay if players don't like some of the cards, and then as long as they love some of the other cards. But if they feel indifferent towards everything, then I think we failed. Um, but I know this is a different experience than opening a booster pack and just like tossing 14 of the 15 cards and then looking at the rare and being like, eh,
no,
you
yeah,
know,
that
like,
I'll say that like kind of like what I meant more is obviously like not every card is gonna be your favorite, but I mean like for example I'll I man I can't say the card that kind of like for me is my least favorite, and I'm like obviously I guess it would bias people too, but for me there's like a certain card that I'm just like it's really not for me, but I would never throw it away, right? Like this may be a card I could actually see myself using in the deck in the future, but it would be a card that I could like if I had to pick between this card and another one, I'd be like, I prefer this other card just because the feel it gives me. Like for me, honestly, I'm very. I think I play a lot on my emotions. I
Sure.
guess where like I really think a card is cool and I want to add it in my deck. Like I will play a card that is cool over a card that is strategically viable, but is less cool. Like for me, that I'm just that type of player where I really enjoy the flavor in my cards.
Sure.
Um, but like I think Fable's End does a really good job of that. Like I mean, I've shown my friends this game. I kind of like every one of them has that like that character looks cool for like different cards. And like I mean, for me, I'll give like a more example as a core deck. I'm not I'm not like this like gigantic fan of Aladdin. But I have
Hmm.
friends and especially my girlfriend who really really like Arabic Nights. So like when I showed that card, I was like, oh man, I'm gonna play that deck. I never really thought of that. Like for me, like I love like I'm from Florida. I kind of like I kind of grew up by the ocean. And I'm also a big fan of kind of like pirate stuff, like I guess like One Piece, Pirates of the Caribbean, stuff like that. So I saw Kraken and I'm like, ooh, okay, that might be something
Yeah.
for me. And then my cousin, who is actually he's German, or I guess he's over in Germany now. He's always been a big fan of the Grimm fairy tales, and like I showed him Wolf, and it's like, yep, I'm playing that one. And like he just kind of like picked up that one like immediately, which is pretty nice because I think Wolf's kind of like very easy to kind of like show the ropes for in the game. Obviously high skill level, kind of like lower skill ceiling than the rest, I would say. Is how I envision Wolf. But kind of like point is, um, Fable's End has and will have even more kind of like just I guess like play styles for you. I feel I really was like I wish I could talk about it, but I know I can't. Like
I
the
know
next
it's,
like
it's hard. I'm sorry. I wish
no,
we'll
no
get
you're
to
fine.
that place eventually where you can start talking about specific cards, and those cards will be. I mean, I don't know when it's going to be in a few months where you'll be able to go back and say, "Hey, remember in episode 10 when I was talking about the card that I really liked? It's this card." And then you'll be on the next card that you like even more because we'll be on like expansion 10 or whatever.
I'll
And
say
and
this. Thank goodness we're not the audience, Steven. I bet you right
I
now there's
know.
someone there screaming out there, "What is the card?" Like
What?
they're just
Why?
yeah. It's like like I was saying that there's a lot to look forward to in this game. I feel like especially I'll say this like what's coming next. I think the Fable's End we start with is great, but then it's only gonna grow higher. Like we're not like a movie trilogy that's like first one was great, second one doesn't too well. No, babe, we only go up. We're an escalator here. We never go down. Or I should say, I said
We're an escalator here.
we're not a downwards going escalator. We don't go
Yeah.
reverse. That was a really bad
The
analogy. I want to be clear. But
the
yeah,
next stop is
uh,
always the floor above the floor that we're on.
yeah, exactly. There's no going down. You're never escaping this. There's a crippling addiction.
I think on that note, though, I think we will put a cap on this episode. Even though I really honestly feel like you and I could talk for another hour. But
That's always the case, though. Yeah, we
it's
had to
always the
stop
case.
sometime.
I feel like once you and I start going, I think there's a lot because there's still so much to dive into, right? There's still so much more to talk about. I mean, we kind of started with lore and then we ended with expansions and we can go back to the lore and talk more about Terramythos. We can talk more about Berserk, honestly. But we'll leave it here. And Felipe, you will return at some point, hopefully. I would love to have you on more regularly because I think you're just such a wealth of information about trading card games and like your enthusiasm for the game. Plus, being the primary programmer, it's like there's so much
Well,
to talk about.
I'll say co-programmer.
Oh,
A lot
right.
of
That's
credit
fair.
to
That's
me.
fair.
Yeah, yeah.
I say when I say primary programmer, and this is if Chris, if you're listening to this, is not a slight against you at all by any means. It's more the reason why I'm framing it that way is just because um, whenever we're talking about mechanics stuff, I'm always sending stuff to Felipe because Felipe is programming the card effects. So I think of that as programming, but that's not accurate because Chris is also doing a ton of programming, and he's like always converting the Windows version of the game into the Mac build. Like that's his like primary thing. So for me to say that, I misspoke and I apologize. That was not
No,
accurate.
you're good. I obviously I need to. So I just want to make that clear. Like Just,
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that. That's an important correction.
But yeah. All right. Well, thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure. I guess maybe next time I'll try joining with the play testers too. I feel it's kind of like
I think
that
we
could
need
be
to
a cool one.
we need to cross those worlds where we get like you and Tylen, or you and Eric, or you and Jarrett. That would be awesome. I would love that. In fact, those two, Eric and Jarrett, they're long overdue for another episode. I think I really need them both to be on here. Especially Eric, I haven't talked to in a while. I really need to get him back on this, but that's neither here nor there. I just want to say thank you to everyone who's listened so far. Stay tuned. We have more stuff coming. We will make an announcement soon about what's going to happen in the next few months. It's going to be really exciting. Until then, we will see you next week. Have a great day. And
on the flip side.
See you on the flip side. Okay, bye.